Photographical composition is like creating visual poetry. But how do we create visual poetry? How do we transform words into images or images into words? How do we express our vision, tell our story, or convey our message using visual poetry? All this and more in this episode of Philosopher, Photographer. Today, we're going to talk about visual poetry, transforming words into images through conceptual photography. Words are powerful tools that we use to communicate, express, and create. Words can also be sources of inspiration, beauty, and meaning. Words can evoke emotions, images, and ideas in our minds. But words are not the only way to convey a message or to tell a story. Images can also speak volumes, sometimes more than words can. Images can also be inspired by words and vice versa. Conceptual photography is a genre of photography that focuses on the idea behind the image, rather than the subject itself. Conceptual photographers use their cameras and creative software to bring their vision to life, often using symbols, metaphors, and themes. Conceptual photography can also be influenced by other forms of art such as literature, poetry, and our favorite on this channel, philosophy. Visual poetry is a type of conceptual photography that transforms words into images or images into words. Visual poets use words as elements of their compositions or use images to illustrate words. Visual poetry can also combine words and images to create a hybrid form of expression. Visual poetry can challenge, surprise, and delight the viewers, as well as make them think and feel. With the help of famous philosophers, we will see how we can use some of these photography tips on conceptual photography to create stunning visual poems. Let's start with one of the most influential and original philosophers of the 20th century, Ludwig Wittgenstein. Wittgenstein was an Austrian-British philosopher who worked on the philosophy of language, logic, and mind. He is known for his two major works, the Tractus Logico-Philosophicus and the Philosophical Investigations. He is also known for his aphorisms and his style of writing. Wittgenstein said, "Philosophy is a battle against the bewitchment of our intelligence by means of language." He also said, "The limits of my language mean the limits of my world." Wittgenstein's quotes teach us that language is not a transparent and neutral medium, but a complex and powerful system that shapes our thoughts and reality. He teaches us that language can also be misleading, confusing, and deceptive, and that we need to be careful and critical of how we use and understand words. He also teaches us that language can also be creative, expressive, and poetic, and that we can expand our world by exploring the possibilities of language. So how can we use Wittgenstein's philosophy in our visual poetry of composition? Well, one way is to use language as a tool to create images that show the bewitchment, the limits, and the possibilities of our intelligence. We can also use language as a tool to create images that challenge, confuse, and delight the viewers and make them question and appreciate the meaning of words. For example, we can photograph a scene that shows a paradox, a contradiction, or a pun using words as props, signs, or captions. We can also photograph a scene that shows a metaphor, a simile, or a rhyme using words as elements, patterns, or textures. As we think of some examples of visual poems and composition that uses language in a Wittgensteinian way, consider a photo of a person holding a sign that says, "This is not a sign." This photo can represent the idea that language is a bewitchment of our intelligence and that words can be misleading and deceptive. Or another photo of a person standing in front of a wall that says, "The end of the world." This photo can represent the idea that language is a limit of our world and that words can be restrictive and confining. Now let's move on to another philosopher who had a different view of the meaning of words and phrases and the nature of intellect and intelligence, Michel de Montaigne. Montaigne was a French philosopher and writer who lived in the 16th century. He's known for his essays, a collection of personal and eclectic reflections on various topics such as education, friendship, death, and cannibalism. He's also known for his skepticism, humanism, and relativism. Montaigne said, "Every man bears the whole stamp of the human condition." He also said, "I study myself more than any other subject. This is my metaphysics. That is my physics." Montaigne's quotes teach us that the meaning of words and phrases is not fixed and universal, but variable and personal. He teaches us that words can have different meanings for different people depending on their culture, context, and experience. He also teaches us that words can be used to explore and express ourselves, and that we can learn more about the world by learning more about ourselves. So how can we use Montaigne's philosophy in our visual poetry and composition? Well, one way is to use words as a tool to create images that show the diversity, the complexity, and the uniqueness of the human condition. We can also use words as a tool to create images that show the curiosity, the introspection, and the self-expression of ourselves. For example, we can photograph a scene that shows the contrast, the similarity, or the connection between different people using words as labels, quotes, or dialogues. We can also photograph a scene that shows the reflection, the exploration, or the discovery of ourselves using words as mirrors, questions, or answers. Here are some examples of visual poems that use words in a Montaignian way. Consider a photo of two people from different cultures holding signs that say hello in their languages. This photo can represent the idea that words are a diversity of the human condition and that words can have different meanings for different people. Or a photo of a person looking at a mirror with the mirror showing their name. This photo can represent the idea that words are a mirror of ourselves and that words can reflect our identity and personality. Lastly, consider a photo of a person looking at a book with the book showing a question. The photo can represent the idea that words are a question of ourselves and that words can explore our curiosity and knowledge. These are just some examples of how we can use words to create Montaigne-inspired visual poems and compositions. Of course, there are many other ways to interpret and apply his philosophy, and I encourage you to experiment and find your own. We have reached the end of this episode of Philosopher, Photographer. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. I also hope you feel inspired to use words and images in your visual poetry and to transform words into images or images into words. Remember, words and images are not separate and distinct, but interrelated and interdependent. Words and images can both be sources of inspiration, beauty, and meaning. Please make sure to support this channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing, and hit the bell icon to get notified of future episodes. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you next time.